Hi, I'm Tori, and welcome to our first issue of Tori's Stories. Today I'm going to read to you from The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. This is the unabridged 1872 text, and it is in the public domain. This is a story that was one of my favorite stories when I was a little girl, and I am very happy to be reading it to you today. Chapter 1. Why the Princess Has a Story About Her. There was once a little princess whose father was king over the great country full of mountains and valleys. His palace was built upon one of those mountains and was very grand and beautiful. The princess, whose name was Irene, was born there, but she was sent soon after her birth, because her mother was not very strong, to be brought up by the country people in a large house, half castle, half farmhouse, on the side of another mountain, about halfway between its base and its peak. The princess was a sweet little creature, and at the time of my story begins, was about 8 years old, I think. But she got older very fast. Her face was fair and pretty, with eyes like two bits of night sky, each with a star dissolved in the blue. Those eyes, you would have thought, must have known they came from there. So often they were turned up in that direction. The ceiling of her nursery was blue, with stars in it, as like the sky as they could make it. But I doubt if ever she saw the real sky with the stars in it, for a reason which I had better mention at once. These mountains were full of hollow places underneath, huge caverns and winding ways, some with water running through them, and some shining with all colors of the rainbow when a light was taken in. There would not have been much known about them, and there not been mines there. Great deep pits, with long galleries and passages running off from them, which had been dug to get the ore of which the mountains were full. In the course of digging, the miners came upon many of these natural caverns. A few of them had far-off openings out of the side of a mountain, or into a ravine. Now, in these subterranean caverns lived a strange race of beings, called by some gnomes, by some kobolds, and by some goblins. There was a legend current in the country that one time they lived above ground, and they were like other people, but for some reason or other, concerning which different legendary theories, the king had laid what they thought too severe taxes upon them, or had required observances of them that they did not like, or had begun to treat them with more severity in some way or another, and impose stricter laws, and the consequence was that they had all disappeared from the face of the country. According to legend, however, instead of going to some other country, they'd all taken refuge in the subterranean caverns, whence they never came out but at night, and then seldom showed themselves in any numbers, and never too many people at once. It was only in the least frequented and most difficult part of the mountains that they were said to gather, even at night in the open air. Those who had caught sight of any of them that had greatly altered in course of generations, and no wonder, seeing they lived away from the sun in cold and wet and dark places. They were now not ordinarily ugly, but were either absolutely hideous or ludicrously grotesque, both in face and in form. There was no invention, they said, of the most lawless imagination expressed by pen or pencil that could surpass the extravagance of their appearance. But I suspect those who said so had mistaken them for animal companions or of the goblins themselves, for which more by and by. The goblins themselves were not so far removed from the humans as such a description would imply. And as they grew misshapen in body, they had grown in knowledge and cleverness, and now were able to do things no mortal could see the possibility of. But as they grew in cunning, they grew in mischief, and their great delight was in every way they could think of to annoy the people who lived in the open air story above them. They had enough of the affection left for each other to preserve them from being absolutely cruel for cruelty's sake. So those that came their way, but still they so heartily cherished the ancestral grudge against those who occupied their former possessions, and especially against the descendants of the king who had caused their expulsion, that they sought every opportunity of tormenting them in ways that were so odd as their inventors. And although dwarfed and misshapen, they had strength equal to their cunning. In the process of timing, they had got a king and a government of their own, whose chief business, beyond their own simple affairs, was to devise trouble for their neighbors. It will now be pretty evident why the little princess had never seen the night sky. They were much too afraid of the goblins to let her out of the house then, even in company with ever so many attendants, and they had good reason, as we shall see by and by. That is chapter 1, and I look forward to seeing you for chapter 2 and what will happen to Irene and the goblins. Thank you for listening to Tori Stories. Goodbye.